Hey guys, Mr. Denton back again. We are going to be taking a look at The Secret City, Chapter 3 today. And I want you guys you can pause this video. I'm not going to let it play for multiple minutes well, the map will be up the whole time I'm reading today. But if you wanted to look at the map without me talking over it, pause the video and just check the map out. This is the map the kids found at the end of Chapter 2 in the attic, in the secret compartment, in the old piece of furniture that fell over. And you can see it's got a clue written. It's got a date with Roman numerals. It's got some other little tidbits all over it. There are little clues everywhere. So you've got your clue right here. Got another clue here. Down here there's a clue. There's an arrow. There's another arrow. There's an I. There's an X. Skull and crossbones, another I, some initials, and a date in Roman numerals, and then a bunch of passages. So the kids are going to they're going to do some exploring based on this map. And spoiler alert, the map starts, I believe it starts right here, if I'm thinking correctly. I know it starts right there. I've read the book 3 or 4 times. That's where the map starts. All right. So once again, feel free to pause it and check out the map. And if you wanted to leave a comment, would be a pretty cool thing to do. You could leave a comment to this video, or you could, I guess I can make an assignment where you can comment. What do you think all these things on the map mean? I think that'd be a pretty interesting prediction from you guys. So make a comment. Um, I'll put it in Google Classroom. And when I put this in Google Classroom, I will leave you a Google Doc that you can type your comments and your thoughts. What do you think this map means? What do you think all these symbols means? What do you think's going on in the map here? I think that'd be pretty cool. So check your Google Classroom after this video is posted, and there'll be an assignment there. You can post your comments. And first thing tomorrow, when I make the next video, I'll read some of those comments out loud. Be pretty cool. All right, here we go. Chapter 3, The Secret City. Here we go. Chapter 3, The Map to Fortune. That's the name of the map. That's the name of the chapter. George and Derek stood up looking where Shannon had pointed. The desk wasn't broken after all. George saw with a surge of relief, a small wood panel, a secret panel, had popped off from its surface. The displacement of the panel had revealed a shallow cranny, a cranny that held a yellowed piece of paper. The paper lay flat, face up. George looked at the strange marks on the page. Was it really a map or just some kind of diagram? One thing was for certain, it wasn't a shopping list. What is it? Derek asked. I told you, Shannon insisted. It's a treasure map. They both looked at George like he was some kind of expert. Well, it's obviously something important, he admitted. I mean, it was hidden under this secret panel on the desk, but I just don't know if it's really a treasure map. It's a treasure map. It's a secret map, George, Shannon said, in a house owned by a pirate. Do I really have to explain this to you guys? Derek was staring at the map hard, looking at every notation from corner to corner. It's not like any map I've ever seen. I mean, there aren't any coastlines or mountains or landmarks of any kind, just a bunch of lines and symbols. Aren't you some kind of expert? Shannon scoffed. I wonder if your dad knows how to read it, George. I wonder if he even knows it's here. George said. The panel had been invisible before the letter rack had crashed into the desk. The map, or whatever it was, could have been hidden for the last 300 years. He bent closer, studying the tattered paper. His heartbeat quickened as he saw some letters in the upper right corner. Whoa, look, he said. WK. Looking at our map, they're talking about that right there. You can see where I'm moving the mouse there. WK. So that's kind of some kind of abbreviation, Derek asked, for week or western or something. Try William Kidd, George said. His voice shook, as in Captain Kidd, the pirate. See, Shannon's voice rose with excitement. I told you. You guys, do you hear that? Derek asked. George froze and heard the door downstairs opening. He looked at his new watch. 7 o'clock exactly. He felt sweat breaking out all over him. Derek pointed down at the scattered bits of paper on the floor. He and Shannon knelt down to scoop it up hurriedly in their hands. Where? Derek whispered. Shannon stuck the paper into her jacket pockets, and Derek silently did the same. Get the map, Shannon said in a fierce whisper. George went to grab the map from its nook inside the desk, but his fingers poked into the compartment. Something terrible happened. As he fumbled for the map, George's finger knocked into the wooden lid of the compartment, and suddenly George heard a click. When he looked over, he saw that the lid had retracted into the compartment. It was closed again, with the map still inside. Uh-oh, George muttered. George, I'm home. Peter Van Gelder's voice echoed from downstairs. Come on, George, Shannon whispered. Get the map. We have to go. George reached for the lid and pulled, but it wouldn't budge. The compartment was locked tight. I think I locked it again, George whispered. He kept pulling at the wooden lid, straining to hear if his dad was moving around downstairs. What if he was climbing the steps already? What if he just ran outside the attic door? Can you open it? George pulled and pulled, trying to pry the lid loose with his fingernails, but he wasn't making any progress. It won't open, George whispered. George moaned. His dad was definitely getting closer. We don't have time, Shannon said. She scooped up the rest of the confetti into her pockets. George's eyes frantically swept the attic. The paper scrolls and their pigeonholes didn't look too much worse for the wearer. The attic looks okay, he said. We have to go. Maybe we can come back for the map another time. Don't worry, Derek whispered. I memorized it. You what? I memorized the map. George rolled his eyes. Derek was always going on about how he had a photographic memory. George doubted there was such a thing, but for now, they just had to get moving. His dad was on his way upstairs. They headed for the attic steps. Derek peeked down, then descended. The stairs creaked as George went down. Shannon stepped off the last slat and lifted the lower tier of the staircase from the ground in one smooth motion. Springs and gears ground noisily as she folded up the stairs back into the ceiling. George? It was his father's voice again. He was definitely on the second floor. They were trapped up here. George and Derek looked at each other helplessly. George never came up to the third floor. At least that's all that was up here was his father's room and the bathroom. Up here, Mr. Van Gelder, Shannon yelled. What was she thinking? George opened his mouth to protest, but it was too late. As Peter Van Gelder climbed toward them, George saw something moving down the corner of his eye. It was the cord that pulled down the attic stairs. It was swinging wildly. There was no way his dad could miss it. Shannon reached up to the cord and brought it to a stop with two fingers, then dropped her hand to her side. George's dad came into view, his eyes narrowed with curiosity. You have a really nice house, Mr. Van Gelder, Shannon said quickly. Thank you, Shannon. George was just showing me the whole thing, she continued cheerily. I hope you don't mind. I never met anyone in New York City who owned a whole house before. Well, it's been in my wife's family for all of my friends live in apartments, except my friend Josephine, whose parents have a brownstone, but that's way out in Brooklyn. Peter Van Gelder opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked a bit overwhelmed by Shannon's rapid-fire talk. She brushed past him, and Derek and George followed. They'd made it. They hadn't been caught. But George hadn't really even cared. All I could think about was that paper in the secret compartment. The paper with Captain Kidd's initials on it. After Shannon left, George and Derek helped clean up the mess from the party. It wasn't until George had come back from taking out the last load of trash with his dad that he realized Derek had disappeared. George walked around the first floor, then headed for his room. Then he found Derek sitting on the bed, drawing something on the back of a piece of wrapping paper. What are you doing? Derek turned the paper around to show George. George's eyes widened. Whoa! On the paper was a copy of the map they'd seen in the attic. As far as George could tell, all the odd and intersecting lines were there, and the words, it looked exactly the same. How'd you do that? I told you I have a photographic memory. Or something close to it. If I really look at something, I can just remember it. I thought you were just making that up, George said, confused. Derek raised one eyebrow as he handed George the map. Happy birthday. That is the end of chapter 3. So, once again, guys, hope you guys are enjoying the story. We'll do an upload every day. It'll be a chapter a day. And in Google Classroom, if you want to I guess you can comment on this video on YouTube. You do it either way. You can. What do you think the map? What do you think's going on with the map? What do you think all the symbols mean? Make your best predictions, and we'll talk about those tomorrow. I guess actually it'll be Monday since it's Friday.